Now, the offense you saw Friday night is the one the Cardinals have been waiting for. Now, the question is, can the Redbirds keep it going? Coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you in the evening hours of Friday, May 17th, 2024. And we're getting a chance tonight to talk about a Cardinal win in which the offense erupted for 10 total runs, and for the first time this season, 4 homers in the same game, as the Cardinals scored in 7 out of 8 innings on Friday night to beat the Boston Red Sox 10-6. It was what I would consider to be the Cardinals' best offensive performance of the season, or maybe at least their most complete offensive performance of the season. Now, there have been other games where the Cardinals have scored a fair amount of runs. I think this is their second time scoring 10. They've done 9 once or twice. But to have the complete, consistent outing that they had on Friday night against the Boston Red Sox is exactly what the Cardinals and their fans in particular have been looking for from the offense so far this season. 10 runs, 7 out of 8 innings, they put up a run. In 3 different innings, they scored multiple runs. And it's out of 8 because they didn't need to bat in the bottom of the ninth because they had the lead at home. And to hit 4 home runs, you get 1 from Lars Nootbaar, 1 from Alec Burleson, 1 from Masyn Winn, his first of the season, and 1 from Nolan Gorman, which I think is probably the most significant of all. Even though it was just a solo shot and he's still hitting sub 200 on the season for the batting average, getting Nolan Gorman going could be the skeleton key to unlock this Cardinal offense. I was asked this morning on 590 The Fan, co-hosting Hot Take Central with Cam Jansen, Jimmy the Cat Hayes, and Cole Bartemus, and Cam asked me for the answer to who would be my most disappointing Cardinal so far this season. And this morning, my answer was Nolan Gorman, because I really felt like before the year, this was going to be the season in which Gorman took the step from, kind of a streaky player, but the numbers are going to be there at the end of the year. There are times where you could bat him clean up and he could carry your lineup for a while. But then there are going to be some times where you really don't want him in the lineup at all, and you're going to question whether he should be even on the big league roster or maybe take a stint in AAA. Like, that's kind of what the last couple of years had been for Gorman. And I really did think in his age 24 season, we were going to see him step forward. And maybe that's just not realistic. Maybe he's just going to continue to be a guy who's streaky. But this year, the streaks have sort of been outweighed by the negative streaks. He's got 6 home runs now, and so that total could be pretty close to where you want it to be at the end of the year if he's on pace for 22, 23. That's not quite where you want him, but very easily you could see Nolan Gorman go on a bit of a streak, and suddenly we're talking about him again as a 30-home run candidate. I don't think he's too far off from that pace, but it's the rest of it that the Cardinals have really, really been missing, with Nolan Gorman batting 193, and the OPS is at 658 even after the home run on Friday night. So to be able to get Gorman going, and yeah, I know Goldschmidt is a given. You got to get him going. Arenado consistency, you got to have it. You're missing Wilson Contreras right now, so other guys have got to step up. You need more from Lars Nootbaar. He's very much beginning to provide that. Another big game for Newt as he goes 1 for 3 with the homer. Also reached base a couple of times via walk and scored a total of 3 runs while driving in 2. Lars Nootbaar's OPS is now above 700. Alec Burleson, another big game, 2 for 5 with another home run. His OPS is up to 789. This guy's a legit hitter. I mean, he is just proving it day after day right now, and the season-long numbers are giving that Alec Burleson is legit and belongs near the middle of this Cardinals lineup on a daily basis, whether he's your DH or you stick him in the outfield or you have him sub in at first base for Paul Goldschmidt. You got to have Burley in there at this point. And Ivan Herrera kind of making his little comeback effort after he started so hot to begin the year. We saw the bat tail off a bit, and I think he's just too consistent to be down for too long. He's got a batting average back up to 286 after a 2 for 4 night on Friday. OPS back up to 739 for Ivan Herrera. Brendan Donovan leading things off, went 2 for 5 with a double, a couple of doubles, in fact, and scored runs both times. Led off the game with a double, and then Newt with the homer. That is why you like the Donovan-Nootbaar alignment 1-2, by the way. Don't care if it's lefty-lefty. It just doesn't matter at this point. Those guys get on base, and they also seem to be able to provide some damage, especially when they're in tandem. I really do think that is a 1-2 punch that is sustainable atop the Cardinal order. You had pretty much everybody contributing tonight. The only guy who didn't get a hit was Michael Ciani, and, of course, he was the guy that I picked in Cardinals Gifts Bombs Away game on Twitter. That was a little bit silly. I thought I would go bold. I really did think about Masyn Winn, too, and he does end up hitting a home run. And, again, Masyn Winn's had the batting average. He's had 7 stolen bases coming into tonight. He's had the very, very supreme defense that he plays at shortstop. You're just looking for a little bit more power so that you can get the slugging numbers and the OPS thereby numbers up. And now he's up to 727 on the OPS. All of a sudden here, you look up and down that Cardinal lineup, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys in tonight's lineup with an OPS above 700. That's not the benchmark that you're necessarily striving for, but it is a foundation piece compared to where the Cardinals were. If you had maybe made the same look at the lineup about a week ago or so, it would have been dire straits compared to this. So guys are starting to come around a little bit, it seems. The Cardinals have had a trend of late where they are consistently getting hits. Tonight was 14 more hits. I know that Wednesday night in the finale against the Angels, they didn't score very many runs because of Risp issues, but they went and collected 9 hits. Tonight, 14. I think of their last 5 games, 6 games, whatever it's been, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but over that stretch, the Cardinals have had double-digit hits in every game but one, and in that game they had 9. So the offense is putting themselves in position to be able to score these runs, and now we're finally seeing the Cardinals do exactly that. A 5-for-11 night with runners in scoring position is what this team needed. They just had to have it because they were last in baseball coming into today when it comes to batting average with runners in scoring position. They're hitting 191 on the year with Risp. And I keep seeing the comments, we should change it, call it crisp. We're talking Cardinals, runners in scoring position, and the crisp is not looking too crispy for the St. Louis Cardinals this year. Well, after a 5-for-11 tonight, hey, they're out of the basement, kind of. They're again tied in a category with the trusty old White Sox, tied for last, but at 199. And because MLB.com has the Cardinals listed 29th and the White Sox listed 30th, I will assume that the Cardinals have the advantage by a percentage point or so, somewhere down the decimal line, to be officially out of the basement for the moment as the worst crisp, the worst runners in scoring position hitting team in baseball. They had a nice night tonight. The power was there. The timely hitting was there. You're not going to score 10 runs every game. I get it. But this is a lot more what it's supposed to look like. And that is the exact sentiment that Cardinals manager Ollie Marmol shared after the game with this audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest.
Amazing. That's what it's supposed to look like. Those guys continue to take really competitive at-bats. You look at the last couple games, and they've done that. Today was fun, man. Up and down that lineup, not a whole lot of breathing room. Extra base hits, homers, some key hits when they were needed from just about everybody. So offense looked really, really good today.
You got it everywhere, but you get 2 out RBI hits from Goldie and Nolan.
Yeah.
You get 2, 3, 4 get on base 3 times apiece. How much does this offense go when that exists in the middle of the line?
Yeah, it really goes. And Goldie did a really nice job today. Nato 3 hits, drove in a run there. That was a big run at the end. Burleson, man, just continues to swing a really good bat, driving the baseball. To see that out of Newt. Winn leaves a yard. Gorman, it's good to see a homer out of him. Hopefully we can continue to build off of that and start swinging with some confidence. But up and down that lineup, that was a good one. It was tough to pitch. I mean, that's a good staff across the way, too. They've done a nice job. So, solid day.
Audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest there from the postgame, as I was not at Busch Stadium tonight. Tonight being the 9-year anniversary of the wedding between my wife and I. That's right. I got married pretty young. But we're 9 years strong, and so I was not at Busch today. But shout out to my wife for saying it's okay to still record the podcast late at night after she went to bed tonight. And speaking of the B-Schaeff Daily podcast and the YouTube channel in general, quick promo, YouTube memberships are now live for the Brenden Schaeffer St. Louis Cardinals writer YouTube channel. And this will be a lot of fun, too, when I get the next live stream, which I don't know exactly when that's going to be. They kind of vary when I can afford to do them. And by afford to do them, I mostly mean time, because they do tend to get me over an hour most every time that I do one of the live streams. But I wanted to shout out some of our new members to the YouTube channel who have joined the subscription, if you will, to be channel members. Dominic, Jennifer, what's going on? They hop in alongside Scotty, Darren, Justin, Damian. Appreciate all you guys who have joined. And if you'd still like to join and get the special badge when you comment on the channel and special distinctions during live streams and other perks, it's all being described there at the link in the bottom of this video description. You can check out that link, answers any questions you may have. And if it still doesn't answer every question you have, DM me. I'm on Twitter at B-Schaeffer12. Say, hey, I got a question about channel memberships on YouTube. What's the deal with this, that, or the other? And I'll be happy to walk you through and answer it. I am super grateful for anybody who sees the value in hopping on board with that membership because it helps me out as I continue to grow this channel and cover the Cardinals and put out these videos. So appreciate you guys, obviously, for listening. And those of you who have hopped in as a member, big thanks and jump on in. The water's warm. So let's go ahead and get back to the conversation, though, about Friday's win. Offense. It's really that simple. If this offense gets it going, these Cardinals are going to have a shot. And I understand they've still got a lot of ground to make up. They're still 6 games below 500. Checking out the standings here as we sit, the Cardinals are technically out of the basement, so that's good news. They've got the Cincinnati Reds to thank for that. As we record this podcast, the Reds are 19-26. The Cardinals 19-25, and the Reds are playing at Los Angeles Dodgers this weekend. So perhaps a chance to see that gap grow if the Cardinals are able to win some games. We know the Dodgers, pretty good team. Pirates having a little more luck. I may make a separate video at some point on Saturday afternoon talking about the Paul Skeens outing for the Pirates from Friday. This guy is unbelievable, and he's going to be a problem in the NL Central for years to come. 7 strikeouts in a row to begin his outing. Pirates beat the Cubs, which is honestly a good thing for the Cardinals and anybody who's vying for a wild card in the NL Central because the Cubs are in a spot right now, and the Pirates are 4 games below 500. But it means the Cardinals still a game back of Pittsburgh for 3rd place. It's early enough that as long as the team is playing well, and don't confuse that for me saying, oh, it's early, it's okay that the Cardinals have the record they have. No, but what I'm saying is it's early enough that if the Cardinals begin to turn a corner and hit more consistently and can, I'm not going to even say that where they're at right now as a starting rotation is good enough because it's not. I don't think it will be sustainable to have, the 25th best ERA, and that was before Kyle Gibson gave up 5 earned runs tonight. I'll check on the updated totals there statistically as the Cardinals are toward the bottom of the table when it comes to pitching staff ERA, particularly in the rotation. I think they were 25th before the day began. And although Gibby gave you 6, and that is what you want to see from him, and he occasionally can tend to pitch to the score and just try to get a little deeper in the game when he's needed. Things kind of fell apart a little bit late for him tonight, but got through 6 innings, gave up the 5 runs. It's not a great outing. I won't play the Ollie Marmol audio talking about the outing by Kyle Gibson because I don't think you should be extremely pleased. But again, the fact that the guy's getting through 6 innings does carry value because it's innings the bullpen doesn't have to pitch, and it's also innings where the bullpen doesn't have a chance to blow up. And it's not that they don't have a solid bullpen this year, but anytime you're talking about tasking relief pitchers with more than 3 innings, you're inevitably talking about using some of your less desirable options in relief. So for Gibby to be able to go 6 still does bring something to the table for this Cardinal team. And the bullpen, in large part tonight, did its job. The runs given up by JoJo Romero in the 7th were charged to Kyle Gibson, and Ollie Marmol's explanation for sending Gibby back out for the 7th was to just try and get through those last 2 batters before turning things over to JoJo so that they wouldn't have to ask him basically to get 6 batters was the thought. Maybe they were going to sort of cut things up a little bit more than they ended up doing because the base runners reached and more runs scored. JoJo gives up a hit, and the runs are charged to Kyle Gibson there in the 7th. But Gibby comes back out for the 7th. Maybe that's a managerial choice that you could nitpick about because he was getting up there a little bit when it comes to effectiveness. The pitch count was okay, but was getting a little bit deeper. He was up to 90 pitches by the time they pulled him. That one's tough because with where his pitch count was, he was in the 80s, and then in the 7th inning gives up a double after a walk to Vaughn Grissom. And that can be tough, too. You're facing your first batter of the 7th. You're at a fine pitch count when the inning begins. You walk him, he gets away from you, and then a double down the line. Suddenly, you're out of the game and those two guys are going to end up scoring and you're not on the mound to do anything about it. That's not a great feeling. But if you can just isolate Gibby's first six and say, 6 innings, 3 runs, I understand you can't do that because he ultimately did get charged with those runs, but it's in a little bit of a different fashion where it does feel different, especially in a game where you had the lead at that point for the Cardinals. They were scoring so consistently, and it was 7-3, and then those couple of runs score. That is a point at which, and it's not perfect, but you're trying to pitch to the score a little bit and just put balls in play. And Gibson didn't do his job in that regard, right? Like, he walked Vaughn Grissom. You want to make sure you're not giving up anything free in that spot if you're trying to just simply grind out a couple more outs so you can make things a little easier on your bullpen that night. But all in all, for Gibson to get you 6 again is suitable to what the score of this game was. You would have liked for him to be able to maybe slam the door and at least don't let make a guy beat you, is what I'm trying to say. Don't walk Vaughn Grissom would be probably the one regret. And then you give up a hit, that's going to happen. But my larger point of the Cardinals rotation after tonight, which again, it's not your everyday typical 6 innings, 5 runs allowed, because he did pitch into the 7th and just things went off the rails there, and they decided, and probably rightfully so, to pull him out of the game before things could really get dicey in terms of the score, because even after those runs scored, it's still 7-5, and then you've got some quality relievers that you feel good about. And then by the time the Cardinals scored more runs and added more insurance, you felt comfortable with John King pitching the 9th. And that's that's a wonderful thing. To not need Ryan Helsley in this game, which I think it could have happened if John King had maybe gone off the rails a little bit more. I was surprised to see him throw to second base on that comebacker in the 9th inning, because runner from third was going to score regardless. I think he was trying to end the game right there on the double play. But if he sails that throw into center field, suddenly you're talking about a Ryan Helsley or somebody that might be getting loose in the bullpen to try and come in for the rescue. And with the off day Thursday, it probably would have been Ryan Helsley. To be able to win this game and not have to use him in game 1 against Boston sets you up pretty well for the rest of the weekend. You use JoJo, you use Kittredge, but that is certainly something that I think is a feather in the Cardinals' cap when it comes to the way that this game played out tonight. But yeah, anyway, with King, I thought maybe he would just take the out at first because of the cushion they had on the score. But my larger point about Gibson in the Cardinals rotation in general is this. I finally tracked down the number. 4.79 is the ERA for the starters after tonight. That's still 25th in baseball. It's just a hair better than the White Sox. You've got the Astros, Athletics, Marlins, and Rockies are the teams that are worse in their rotation ERA. White Sox, Athletics, Marlins, Rockies just probably don't have very much good pitching in their rotation. Astros have just had a ton of injuries, and I'm willing to venture that the Astros rotation probably at some point passes the Cardinals rotation in ERA. It's 4.79 to 4.89 right now. I think you get some of those studs back for Houston, you probably end up leveling out a little bit there. I think the Astros, they've started terribly, but I don't really think it's what's going to happen through the long haul. And now, even as I take a look, they've won 8 of 10. They've won 6 in a row. The Astros are going to be there. If you're one of those American League teams that's sitting there in a wild card spot, maybe that's the poor Kansas City Royals, who are playing some really good baseball right now. Maybe it's a team like I don't know, the Twins, whoever it ends up being, that's sitting there thinking, hey, we got a shot at this wild card thing. You might be sorely mistaken, because the Astros are coming. It pains me to say it, because I don't hold any love in my heart for Houston, and I know a lot of friends and family members that like the Astros, and it's fun to tease them. My co-host on the Big Show, KTGR, Andy Humphrey, is the same. He's Houston born and bred, but I think with the Astros starting to turn the corner, they're kind of inevitable. That's a tangent, but I just had to get that out there. But back to the point I was trying to make, I think this rotation for the Cardinals is going to have to find another gear, and I'm not entirely sure where it comes from. Like, Gibson has been better than he was tonight, 6 innings and 5 runs. Again, we talked about the weird way in which those runs came, but the ERA-wise, that's in the range of like a 7 or 8 ERA pace, which bumped him back above the 4.00 mark for the season. He's at 4.09 now. Gibson's total line was 6+ innings, which is really just a fancy way to say he pitched into the 7th, but didn't record an out in the 7th. So still 6.0, 8 hits, 5 runs, all earned, 3 walks. You don't want to see that from Kyle Gibson, and does give up 1 home run in the game. But 90 pitches, he was efficient. It's just one of those things that if he doesn't walk Grissom, or the ball that ends up going as a double down the line, maybe that one goes foul and something different can happen in that AB. Like the margins were pretty slim on it could have easily been a 6-3 or a 6-4 tonight for Gibson. It always feels a little different when the guy's not on the mound to give up his own runs, but he did allow those base runners, so it absolutely does count. I just don't know where the other gear comes from for this rotation is what I'm trying to say. I think Sonny Gray, outside of his last couple of outings, has obviously been unbelievable, and I think he will level back into that guy. If I had to set the over-under for his ERA right now, Sonny, I would probably put it around 2.79, right? Like right around where it was last year for him with the Twins. He's at 3.09 or something right now, but he was below 1 there for a minute and has just been getting beat around a little. I just don't expect him to continue to struggle to the level that he has the last couple of starts. But you look at like Miles Mikolas, maybe it levels out by Miles throwing a bunch more of those 6 innings, 3-run type of starts. Maybe he'll mix in a 6-2. Ideally, you can find a 6-1 somewhere in there if you're Miles Mikolas, right? But he just hasn't been that type of pitcher. The margin for error for Mikolas, it's been slim. And sometimes you can say he really doesn't make errors, but still kind of gets punished because his stuff is not overwhelming to anybody. He hasn't had a game this year where he's allowed fewer than 2 runs. So he's given up a couple pretty much, not pretty much, literally every time so far this season, regardless of circumstance. And those outings that end up looking like a 6-inning 3-run, 6-inning 2-run are really the best that he's been able to muster. So that may not bode well for his final ERA, but you could see a world in which Mikolas gives you enough of those kind of starts to trim the ERA down to 5.2. I'm not saying that would be great. It would be a full run drop from where he is now. And maybe there's somewhere in there that he has that kind of vintage outing where he goes 7 or 8 and shoves and doesn't give up any runs, gives up 1, and that can help the ERA. But if Miles Mikolas is generally that guy that, 6-3, 6-2 is kind of the high end of the spectrum, and the bad games are going to be mixed in to haunt his ERA, if he ends up at like a 4.9 ERA, that might almost just be like, I'm not saying it's great, but it might be better than the alternative of having more of those troublesome outings, because through whatever he's thrown so far, 10 starts this year, he's given up 5 or more earned runs 4 times. So, it's just, he's not striking out a bunch of guys. He doesn't tend to do that ever. So you're looking at that spot in the rotation. We touched on Sonny. Like I've said with Gibson, I think you feel almost better about him than you do most of the other spots. Lance Lynn's another one where it's like we've continued to harp on. He just he's not been the innings eater they thought he was going to be because he doesn't throw enough strikes. And this is not new in 2024. I can remember 2017 Lance Lynn or whatever year it was. Watch him thinking, man, that sometimes he's just getting into these deep counts and it just seems like more laborious than it needs to be. But hey, it's not easy to pitch, and so I'm not saying it's just something he could turn on and off. If your stuff is strong, you're probably going to feel more comfortable putting more of those pitches into the strike zone rather than having to seek for some chase or try to make guys swing at pitches that are just a touch below the strike zone or a little outside to make them roll over on it. That's just all part of the art of pitching. But they need more from Lance Lynn than what he's been giving them recently. The ERA is passable in the low 4s, but just in terms of the overall body of work, I think they're hoping for more from Lynn. And then there is that 5th spot. It did seem today that we got the word that the Cardinals are going to commit to Matthew Liberator in the starting rotation, at least for the time being. I don't know what that means. Presumably it means that they'll continue to stretch him out, and maybe he could be 70, 75 pitches in the outing that he's slated to throw on Sunday. I think that's the right decision if the Cardinals aren't going to full-scale commit to bringing up somebody from AAA. And I guess they're looking at that rotation in AAA and just saying there's really no bona fide that they feel great about sliding in. But this also sort of feels like a combo factor here, because I do like that they're giving Libby an opportunity. I wish my preference would have been for them to be just more straightforward about it from the beginning. But I know things happen sometimes to where that's not as possible to do as it is just to kind of say on a podcast. I recognize there are other factors at play. And when you do have off days and rainouts and you're trying to put the best team out possible because you're feeling the season slip away, there could be some moments that you say, look, we're gonna skip the extra off day for these guys and move everybody up in the rotation, which puts the start that Libby made in his first outing at 50 pitches. Well, now that's 8 days later that it's going to be that rotation spot coming up again. So they figure, well, let's just use him in relief in the interim because he's gonna need some work. But then that means coming back on short rest, technically, even though it was just a relief appearance, to throw the second start. And then he gets beat up a little bit and obviously is only throwing 60 or so pitches. So those are sort of the issues that I have, is just the the in or out, in between sort of mentality when it comes to Matthew Liberatore and the Cardinal rotation, rather than just do what most teams would do and say, all right, who's the next man up that we're going to call up from the minors? John Mozeliak talked a lot about, well, we really like the 5 starters we have, and those guys are going to be the ones to take the ball for us, and we got durable guys and 30-plus starts. That's what we're looking for. That's great, but it's just not realistic, and it wasn't realistic when he said it in February, and it's not realistic now. So what that means is, all right, you're going to have to deal with some backup plans. Who's in the tank to be able to come up and give you a shot? And they're looking at the Graceffos and McGreevy's and saying, all right, we don't really think so. Kloffenstein is sitting on the 40-man. That would be the role of these starters that you decided are worth putting on the 40-man is, look, they're on the 40-man roster. Call them up if you need a starter. Sam Roberts, I understand maybe to be hesitant with him because he's a couple years younger, just not as experienced at the upper levels of the minors. But at the same time, he as well is on the 40-man roster. So it's interesting the reluctance the Cardinals show. It could just be like I'm more critical maybe than I need to be because maybe it's just they believe in Liberatore and want to give him a shot. I know that's not really the case, though. Not that they don't believe in him, but that they weren't angling and eager to give him a shot. It almost feels like, with the way it played out, that it was sort of their last case scenario and say, well, he did well with the 50-pitch outing. Let's go ahead and try it again. But, well, we want to delay it as long as possible. So we're going to, they just have been kind of stringing it along, to my opinion. And if now they're going to put it out there and say he's in the rotation for now, which doesn't mean it's permanent, but like if you're at least going to say he's part of the starting 5, it gives a guy a confidence jolt that I think they probably could have afforded to give him before today, whenever they announced it or Ollie told the media pregame. Like I said, wasn't at Busch, but reading the tweets, I think that was the interpretation. So we'll see. I mean, that'll mean Libby goes Sunday, and I hopefully he continues to have the attack-oriented mentality. That's been the entire thing for him. But that's your number 5 spot in the rotation. If he's able to accomplish it or not, you're looking at a rotation that is on shaky footing compared to where it was, which is just going to mean it's all that much more important for the offense to be the version of the offense that it was destined to be at the beginning of the year, or at least the Cardinals internally thought it could be. Look, I'm not trying to put words into fans' mouths at this point. If you thought they were going to stink offensively, so be it. I just didn't see it. I didn't see it coming before the year, and to this point, it has not been good. It's been ugly. They haven't done enough. But now we're starting to see, all right, what's a sample size that's big enough for you then to go, all right, I squint a little, and I maybe don't even have to squint that hard. If you had a team that going back to, game 2 against Milwaukee, game 2 or 3 against Milwaukee, has put up 10-plus hits in every single game, barring the one on Wednesday in Los Angeles of Anaheim. And that was a day where they at least got 9 hits, but they did. They had the bugaboo of runners in scoring position come back to bite them, and they went 1 for 10 with Risp in that game. But largely, this is an offense that's at least now you can say definitively over the last maybe not quite week, but they do it one more day and you'll be able to say week, has been putting themselves in position to capitalize and score these runs. And Friday is an example of when they finally did that as definitively as they had done it all season. You score a run in 7 out of 8 innings, you were at least going up there, taking your hacks, taking your shot, and delivering on that shot more often than not. 5 for 11 with Risp is technically not more often than not, but it sure is often enough. 5 hits with Risp means you should at least have 5 runs on the board at the end of the day. If they call it scoring position for a reason. I know sometimes you don't score from second on a single. But the Cardinals had a really good offensive night tonight, and, Brian Bayo is a pretty good starting pitcher. He's a young guy with good stuff, and the Red Sox would like to think a guy who's kind of rising up the ranks, and he's had good numbers so far this season. Like, he came into tonight with a 3.13 ERA, and the Cardinals, in the thing that we've been talking about a lot, we've been harping on, all right, Turner Ward, the heat had been turned up a little bit on this coaching staff, and even we thought maybe for a moment Ollie Marmol was kind of managing for his job. You could make the case. I don't know for sure that he was, but there was enough smoke around the conversation. And I'm not talking about anonymous Twitter accounts that say, yeah, I know this or that. I don't partake in any of that. But I just say from the vibe I was getting, it was close enough that if they drop a couple more games, I don't know what the situation might have turned into. But we always talked about, all right, if it's not going to be the manager and it's not going to be the hitting coach, what can they do to fix things? It's all about preparation for that day's starter, in my opinion. That's got to be maybe the number one thing that we needed to see improvement from for the Cardinals. And maybe they were having the preparation, but they weren't getting the results and the execution. But here's an example of a night where they did get results and execution of that process, of that pregame plan that even Ollie Marmol mentioned after the game. They talked about at length of what they wanted to do against the starter. I feel like that's something that I presume happens every day, but it was just tonight that they mentioned specifically. I heard Ollie say that they felt good about the plan and they executed. 4 2/3 for Brian Bayo, 7 hits, 5 runs, all earned, 3 home runs allowed. Whatever they were talking about pregame in that clubhouse, it certainly worked, and they did it. They didn't draw any walks against him, which tells me, man, they were just out there trying to attack this guy when he threw the hittable pitches that were in their sweet spot. You take advantage of those early and often, and to start off the game the way they did with the Donovan double and the Nootbaar home run, that's what we're talking about. I wouldn't change Donovan Nootbaar. If both those guys are in the lineup, they're 1-2 in that order for as long as they both shall live. I mean, till death do you part. Like, it just makes too much sense. When they're both going right, they are on-base fiends who also have the ability to hit for extra bases and to even take a ball out of the yard, as Lars Nootbaar did tonight. Like, it's just so interesting. Like, I mentioned it from Cam Jansen, who's the biggest disappointment. You could have said, well, Goldie is not really doing his job, and his OPS now is back above 600. That's good to see. Arenado is just a shade below 700 at 698. Still would like to see a little more power from him, but it's coming around, and the average is so. It's acceptable. Like, you would have had 5 or 6 names a week ago at this time to say, oh, that guy is the biggest disappointment on this team. Goldie. Could have even said Arenado, although I think that would have been a little bit of a mistake because his numbers weren't so bad. They're even maybe a little bit lower OPS-wise over the past 6-7 days. But you could have said, gosh, Jordan Walker, Gorman, Lars Nootbaar would have been a huge answer. But, the number of those guys, and I'm not going to say Gorman yet just from one home run tonight, but Nootbaar, like you've been seeing it with the at-bats that he's been taking, the walks. He's got 7 walks over the past 7 games that he's played. Comes up with the home run tonight, 7 hits, 7 walks. He's hitting .304 with a .467 on base over the last 7 games that he's played. That's more Lars Nootbaar. And whether he hits a couple of home runs here and there or not, he's going to be that guy that if he's batting second and Donovan's finding a way to get on base in front of him at really just like a 340, 350 clip is all you really need. I think Brendan Donovan is capable of more of that. He's a career 368 on base guy. This year he's only at 313, but I think he'll level out to 340, 350. That is a spot where the engine starts to purr a little bit. And then Goldschmidt and Arenado can do what they're supposed to do and drive guys in. And Alec Burleson batting 5th, man. Like I said it, somebody's going to have to step in for Wilson Contreras. I'm not going to say that the Wilson Contreras injury could go down as a blessing for this team because that's objectively, patently ridiculous. He was their best hitter by far. Had a OPS above 900, close to 950. Not a single other guy on the team has one at even 800. And Alec Burleson is now knocking on the door of that at 789. But you barely, before this week, had guys at 700 on the OPS meter. So to have Wilson Contreras doing what he's doing, it's always going to be a tough road to hoe. A lot to make up for his productivity that he's been able to provide. But Alec Burleson, man, is kind of joining forces and saying, look, I'm going to be a guy in the middle of this lineup, take it or leave it. Got to be in there every day. And gosh, if this Cardinal offense, look, it doesn't take much. If you could squint into the future and see at the All-Star break a healthy Wilson Contreras joining a Cardinal team that ranks a little better in runs scored because they're starting to put it together, and they just get to about 500 at the All-Star break, which right now they're 6 games below, so you have to play some pretty good baseball to be able to get there. But then you add Wilson Contreras back to the lineup. I'm not going to say it's like making a trade, but imagine a lineup that looks like it's supposed to, with Donovan having the 340 on base and maybe a 730 OPS. He's at 694 right now. If you told me right now over under 730, I would take the over. Nootbaar, if he's 750, 760. I don't know. I think 740, 750 is reasonable for him. And ideally, he's closer to 800, but I'm trying to be realistic and just say, look, if the guys that are coming around now can even take that a little bit further. Goldie's at 604. Maybe he doesn't get to 700. I don't know. I don't know what that's going to look like. In an ideal world, he goes on an absolute heater, and you look up, and suddenly he's at 750 on the OPS meter, and everybody's relaxing about Paul Goldschmidt a little more. But yeah, at 604, even after the good game that he had tonight, going 2 for 4, drew a walk, so he's on base 3 times. 2, 3, 4 in the lineup, as you heard Ollie Marmol say, all did get on base 3 times. So just really productive from the middle of the lineup. And count number 5, Burleson, going 2 for 5 with the home run as well. this is the way that it could look. Arenado's at 698 OPS. Let's call 750 for him. Burleson, I don't know if he sustained 789, but he's been climbing. Herrera, 739, honestly feels about right. Gorman's at 658 right now, and that's hopefully too low. Even if he can get to about 720, I'm not saying you'd take that. You'd be disappointed overall, but with where he is, where he's been, get him to 220 on the batting average instead of 190, you feel better. Masyn Winn's hitting 280 right now, 727 OPS. And Michael Ciani just keeps plugging away because he continues to play good center field defense. Has swung a better bat of late. Just tonight was the only guy to not get a hit with the 538 OPS. But like 1 through 9, you basically replace Ciani with Wilson Contreras if you want to play it that way. And defensively, I don't know how viable that is because you're still reluctant to move Lars Nootbaar to center, and he was starting in right tonight. But like that would be 1 through 9, a pretty productive lineup if everybody comes to fruition the way that they're supposed to. One night does not mean they're going to. Before the comments, and look, I'm making this caveat 35 minutes into the podcast or whatever it is, so I understand there's already going to be the angry comments that say, oh, you're making a big deal out of one night. Okay, that's fine, but I'm not really. I'm talking about a week where the Cardinals have, over the past 5-6 games, consistently put themselves in position to cash in with 9+ hits in every single game that they've played over the past 5-6 games. I probably should have looked it up by now just to know specifically when this string started. But they've been able to, offensively, it's something that they said, and Ollie Marmol reiterated this after the game tonight, started in Milwaukee. And I'm looking it up now, going back to the 5-3 loss that they had on Saturday, May 11th. Cardinals had 12 hits that day. So as you're listening to this podcast, probably waking up Saturday morning, Cardinals have for a week straight produced games in which they've had 9 or more hits every single game. And in a good number of them, they've been able to put runs on the board as well. It's that part has to happen. You can't just say, well, we had a great game, and then revert back to the problems you've had with runners in scoring position prior to this point. But if the Cardinals can kind of lock in on just, you don't have to be better with Risp than you are in general, but just be the same. Don't be like, don't put it at a major detriment, which is where the Cardinals had been. They were hitting 191 with Risp. Their overall average was like, not great, but it was like 225. And now their team average is 229 for the season, which is 22nd in baseball. So they're climbing slowly up that list. They have another couple of games like they've been having. You're going to get to number 17 real quick. Cleveland Guardians are 4 or 5 spots ahead of you at 17th in baseball with a 235 average. And that's about what the league average is too, by the way, across Major League Baseball. You get to league average offensively in average, and you do. Batting average is not the only stat. It's one that I rarely use. Honestly, I look more at OPS. But when we're talking about runners in scoring position, I do think it is extremely relevant because all you need to do is get a base hit, and that scores a run. Cardinals in OPS are 665. That ranks 24th in baseball. But again, there's just, 3-4 teams that are just a couple of ticks above them. So there's room for upward mobility is what I'm saying. But the reason I mentioned batting average so much tonight is because with Risp, I think that's relevant. And they're hitting below 200 with Risp, and they're a 229 team in overall circumstances, which means without Risp, they're probably closer to 235, 240. They just need to be the same team with Risp that they've been. And if that levels out, for some teams, it's not possible to, because I do think there is an element for some teams, I'm not just talking about the Cardinals, but in general, that you're not clutch. And other teams like the Royals, who maybe aren't a very good team offensively overall, the Royals in terms of batting average are, I'll find them. They've come up. They're middle of the pack, 241, which is better than the Cardinals. The Royals, though, the reason I bring them up, power-wise, they're not a ton. Their OPS is 692, and where that ranks in baseball is, again, middle of the pack, kind of tied for 16th. And I'll go ahead and check the numbers. The reason I bring them up, for the longest time, they were really outperforming their general stats in terms of what they do with Risp, and it's still the case. They have what did I tell you just now, 692 OPS as a team. They are 829 OPS with runners in scoring position. They're hitting 292. The OPS is 4th in baseball. The batting average is 2nd in baseball. They're hitting 292 with Risp. That's unbelievable, which is part of why I say, look, unless their pitching just stays ridiculously good, which Walker's been good, Brady Singer's been a revelation compared to the disappointment of previous seasons. Seth Lugo's been unbelievable. Brady Singer, I mentioned him. Cole Reagans is who I meant to add. The rotation's been carrying them. It may not be sustainable to hit 292 with Risp with an 829 OPS, looking like the best offense in the league, when overall they've been just like slightly below average in those categories. The Cardinals don't need to be doing what the Royals are doing. They don't need to hit 290 with Risp. Just hit 229 with Risp, and you're probably going to end up being in a lot better of a situation. Now, I do think that's a little bit of an undersell when you consider the fact that their pitching is not an above-average unit at this point, so something's going to have to be above average about this team to get the record above average. But, I mean, baby steps is kind of what I would say, and the Cardinals definitely took a baby step tonight. Can they continue to do it as this series against Boston goes along? Because this is that homestand that you're watching for, that you're going, is this where the Cardinals can make a move, where they can announce themselves in a little bit more of a significant way? Because you go Red Sox, Orioles, Cubs, that's no easy task. So we'll see what it looks like. Saturday night will be Miles Michaelis. Big start for him. Cutter Crawford opposing the Cardinals for the Boston Red Sox. We'll see if the Cardinals can take that second game and then maybe go into a finale of a series, again trying to sweep, and perhaps that might be the time that they're able to get that done. So we'll see. But the Cardinals, they win on Friday. They do it with the bats. That's definitely something that we haven't seen a ton of this year, so it is good to see. I want to touch real quickly before I go. I might end up doing a full podcast or full video on this on Saturday, but I do have daddy daycare duty with my wife going to work. She works the weekend, so it's a bad weekend for the Cardinals to be at home for me, to be able to do what I need to do. But I may be able to do some podcasts when he naps or something. Point being, the City Connect jerseys are out. They've been leaked. They've been officially announced. The way that it happened is ridiculous. It ended up getting posted on Reddit. I think it was basically a mistaken promo email sent that was not supposed to include the Cardinals unis, and then somehow the file was in there. And lo and behold, it's now everybody's seen them. I have thoughts on them. I actually think they're completely fine. They're not surprising to me in any way. You knew that the Cardinals weren't going to try to do something very bold and crazy that would have been a risk. That's not the way they work. Bill DeWitt III has specific things he wants to tell Major League Baseball and Nike about, no, you can't do this with our uniforms. We have to petition the league to keep it this way, and we'll stitch it on the jerseys, even though Nike's changing the protocol with Fanatics. We're going to do it this way. I mean, he's very particular. That's to his credit. I think he cares about we spent the last podcast kind of dogging on him a bit, but it was because of his own comments. But I really think Bill DeWitt III does a great job and cares a lot about, how the Cardinals are perceived and how the organization looks to the public. So it's not a surprise to me with the heavy hand that he has had as team president in the uniform aesthetic and making sure things look the way that maybe history would want them to look, that the Cardinals didn't go very bold with the City Connects. But I'll just read my tweets that I said, that I sent out about these jerseys, and maybe we talk more about it in a video tomorrow. I said, I think the City Connects are pretty slick for what it's worth. The Cardinals were never going to stray too terribly far from their traditional look. They did the right amount of straying while keeping traditional elements, which maybe isn't the assignment as most other teams took it, but I think it does work nicely for the Cardinals. And I added, they probably felt they had to play it safe for the same reason that a historic aesthetic like the Yankees didn't bother to participate in the City Connect game at all, because the Yankees are one of the two teams that aren't going to have one at all. They just said, nah, we're good. So I get that that's maybe disappointing to fans that the Cardinals went pretty safe with it, didn't go bold, but it's also something that I get. It's not surprising. The Lou is on the jerseys. We knew would be. They're red. They do kind of look like, batting practice-y. I saw some comments about that. I think you could lean more into the fleur-de-lis and the St. Louis flag would have been the way that I would do it. People said put the arch in there, and they didn't do that. But I actually do like the STL on the cap, the way that it's framed. Some people didn't like that. I actually do enjoy it. It's a nod, I guess, to 1921 before they did the interlocking STL logo. I don't mind it. I don't know if the lettering, how to describe it, it's a little bit of a French flair with the fleur-de-lis. It just kind of feels, they could lean more into the fleur-de-lis and the flag and the arch. But all in all, I would say pretty much passable. And I actually think they're kind of slick, and they'll sell a lot of them, I think, in my opinion. But that's just my kind of quick thought on the City Connect, since I know they're out and they're leaked and everybody's seen them by now. If you haven't, they're all over Twitter, so go check them out. You can find me on Twitter at B-Schaefer12, and that's where you can DM me. Once again, any questions about YouTube memberships, DM me. I will personally answer them, because it means a lot to me to be able to get people on board and have people supporting the channel the way that several folks already have done. So that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you guys so much for listening and staying locked in as always. We will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.